All right, so our first conversation now. Yes, it marked a historic turning point for Nigeria's fiscal landscape. See, President Bola Tinubu officially signed 4 sweeping tax reform bills into law set to take effect on January 1st, 2026. These include the Nigeria Tax Bill, Tax Administration Bill, Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and a Joint Revenue Board Bill. Together, they usher in a unified tax code, a newly empowered Nigeria Revenue Service, and a streamlined appeals and ombudsman framework, and sweeping reliefs for income and VAT exemptions for low-income earners to generate for generous incentives for MSMEs, agriculture, real estate, and housing. Well, joining us to unpack all of this, we have Marvis Udogu, who is a team lead, taxation, immigration, labor, employment practice group at Stren and Bland Partners. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So, definitely quite a historic moment there. But seeing that even in Kenya, they also had their historic moment too, with President Ruto also signing their finance bill into law. And we had the same thing in Nigeria. Do you find that coincidence interesting, or do you think this was all planned?
Yes, I thank you, Ladi. It's a pleasure to join you to discuss this. I mean, Kenya and happening in Kenya and happening in Nigeria, it shows one thing, that countries with comparable economies like that of Nigeria are beginning to wake up to the potential of what a robust tax framework and a workable tax system can do. And it's not coming as a coincidence right now that both countries are having it at this point. If you look at the trajectory that is moving on in the world, you'll find out that everyone, especially the governments around the world, are looking towards harnessing internally as much revenue as they can, from their tax system. So I feel it's coming at the apt time, for both countries. Thank you.
So what impact will the tax exemption for low-income earners, what do you think that will have on, household spending? And, we've been talking about reducing poverty, taking millions of people out of poverty in Nigeria. What do you think that does for poverty reduction?
A very beautiful question at that. I will want to borrow the words of the chairman for the presidential tax reforms and a policy committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who said that the Nigerian Tax Reform Act, I don't want to call it bills because it's already been passed and assented to by the president, is pro-poor. He used the word pro-poor. Pro-poor in the sense that it's made to lift the burdens of the poor masses, and a practicable way that the tax acts have done this is to ensure that everyone earning anything below 800,000 is not liable for the payment of an income tax. What is the effect of this? The effect of this is that there is more income left in the pocket of, the poor masses. Let me use the word the poor masses right now. And also the other channels of expenses that do not help the poor masses are closed up. It is tied up. Those loopholes are tied up. And the poor masses have at least more money to utilize for their day-to-day feeding and cater for other things, that they need to focus on. Also, on the other side, it will also help those that are into business, but are not beyond the threshold that are exposed to income tax, to focus on building the business itself till the business comes to a point of profitability and grows. That is one thing it has helped in the poor masses. It will also affect, the prices of food items and electricity, education, housing, and other things that were initially on the high side to affect those prices. Because you will find out that part of what influences these prices is the taxes that the manufacturers or producers, remit, in manufacturing or getting these services, rendered to the poor masses. So on the long run of the whole thing, to the household, and, to the poor masses, this tax reform has come as a big relief, to alleviate the struggles and the burden on the Nigerian people. Thank you.
Right. And, going by what Mr. Taiwo Idele said yesterday on Politics Today, says Nigerian households earning 250,000 naira or less are poor, and shouldn't pay taxes. And I remember there was a time, 250K wasn't that bad. But we've seen what's played out with currency devaluation so far. So I guess it's official. So you're earning 250K, you're poor.
Definitely. With this, the inflationary rates in the economy, anyone earning 250K is definitely poor. That's the truth.
And I guess this can change if the naira, suddenly strengthens. At some point, maybe we get back to maybe the 500 level, to the dollar. I guess 250K will be back, on the middle class, at this point. But with over 50 nuisance taxes, being abolished and streamlined under the reforms, how might this shift influence Nigeria's, ease of doing business rankings and investor perception?
Yes, beautiful. You'll find out that from the Tax Reform Act, you'll find out that over 50 nuance taxes have really been abolished and have been streamlined equally. If you look at the Nigerian Tax Act itself, you find out that not less than 11 status or principal status have been codified and brought into that very act itself. You will find that that has created and made room for ease of doing business. Ease of doing business in the sense that the threshold for businesses that fall into small business has been increased. And then the burden of remitting the company income tax, and also the burden of businesses themselves remitting payee, that's the personal income tax in this sense, have also been reduced, provided that those working and those earning salaries or income are earning income, between 800,000 and below. And where it is also between the 800,000 and 2.2 million, there is a graduated level from at least between 0% rate to about 15% rate. And then it also moves from that 2.2 million to about 9 million. There's a graduated rate between that 15% to about 18% and, continuously. So it shows you first that the fears of businesses that they will be stiffened, the growth or the development of the business will be stiffened by taxes is alleviated by these provisions. Now you see companies with an annual turnover of up to 50 million in Naira per year can have some reliefs and focus on business, focus on core businesses to grow their business. And it's also a relief in the ease of doing business now that, taxes, remittance of taxes itself would be much more easier than it was before. Before you need to go to an office, you do this, enter this, tweak all those documents. But now the Tax Reform Act is focused to digitizing and modernizing this to ensure that business focus on the business and carry on their business. Businesses that are into a provision of food, provision of medical and healthcare facilities, rendering services that relate to accommodation, public transportation, they are eased of remitting VAT and remitting other taxes. For small businesses, of course, there are also ease of remitting or deducting and then remitting withholding taxes. And this is a big relief. Now businesses can go in and know that they can grow from the level of small businesses to nano businesses, grow up from that level until they come into the threshold where they can now comfortably, pay taxes and remit their taxes as demanded by the tax law. So I think if there is any good time for people and investors to, do business, this is the best time. The president, while signing the bills into act yesterday, did mention that Nigeria, for the first time, has not just shown by word that they are prepared or they are ready, to welcome the world to do business. They have demonstrated that, and that is what I believe that this Tax Reform Act have just done. Thank you.
So I guess this Reform Act could be some kind of silver bullet to solve all our ease of doing business issues. Hopefully that's enough. At this point. But the new laws empower the Nigeria Revenue Service and create structures like the Tax Appeals Tribunal and Tax Ombudsman. How likely is this institutional overhaul to enhance transparency, reduce corruption, and ensure taxpayer rights?
That provision is a very beautiful provision and one that I've been inking to speak on. The overhaul of what we know before now as the Federal Inland Revenue Service, beyond the nomenclature. When you look at the nomenclature of Federal Inland Revenue Service, there is that attachment of, these are persons working for the federal government alone and everything. But now the name Nigeria Revenue Service now has a more holistic and a welcoming or embracing outlook. But beyond the embracing outlook that we receive from the nomenclature Nigeria Revenue Service is the empowerment that is given to them. That empowerment is broader in spectrum, broader in outreach that it collects, assesses, and see to the accounting for taxes beyond what it normally collects. Now you will see the import duties, excise duties that once was customs base will no longer be collected by other federal bodies, but will be collected by this central body, the Nigerian Revenue Service. The Nigerian Revenue Service now under the new tax law is also saddled with the responsibility of sensitizing the people, ensuring that people are equally registered. Taxable persons are equally registered and obtain their tax identification card and also obtain their tax identification number. And also they make sure that every non-compliant taxpayer is properly, prosecuted or followed the legal way after the needed notices are given. And also they have the body or the duty to ensure that regular rules and regulations or guidelines are provided to guide the people on how to comply with the provisions of this tax law. That is on the one side. One person did mention that with the powers given to the Nigeria Revenue Service, that they may start behaving like demigod, but not to bother about that, because that is not something that we keep to heart, because there is a body also established to checkmate and curtail the activities of these workers under the Nigerian Revenue Service. And one of those bodies is the tax ombuds. That's the tax ombudsman. And that tax ombudsman gives the layman, the lay taxpayer, the right to approach and report any perceived wrong or misassessment or malpractices that might have gone on between the worker from the NRX, and that will be practically looked into, investigated, and the report will be given within a number of days, and which should not be more than 14 days. On the other side, where we have the Tax Appeal Tribunal, the powers of the Tax Appeal Tribunal has now been a little bit expounded, because before now, the Tax Appeal Tribunal, the Constitution and the matters that they have, it seems they don't have jurisdiction over some taxes administered by the internal revenue services of the different states. But right now, that has been elaborated. More reforms, especially on the fiscal side, will come in to ensure that the provisions of this tax reform acts would also be made to align with the Constitution in time to come. I think that is the wisdom behind suspending the implementation of this tax acts for now, till up to 1st January 2026 to enable it to commence. So between that time, the necessary frameworks and the necessary foundations to be laid to ensure the proper working of this tax provisions of this tax reform act would have been laid, and everything will be good. So I think the provisions will enhance for transparency. Transparency now will be that some companies, any company found or any taxable person found to have been involved in evasion of taxes will not only be penalized, but also the tax practitioners who had advised them must be licensed by these bodies. And that tax practitioner, if it is discovered, had wrongly advised the company, may equally suffer a penalization and even a withdrawal of the license given to it. So it's a very much, it will promote transparency. It will also reduce corruption. It may not eliminate corruption entirely, but it's going to reduce corruption and also protect the taxpayers' rights. Thank you.
Right, and definitely everyone's bracing now for January 2026. That's when everything will come into full effect. But what should businesses be doing now to prepare for that time?
Yes, definitely. This is the best time to prepare and get the house in order to make sure that when the time comes, we hit the ground running. That's it.
Right. But what exactly should businesses be doing now, especially some small businesses?
Beautiful. Yes. Beautiful. As it is now, businesses must at this moment, first of all, take a look into their internal records, because this is the proper time to do that. Look into their internal records and also begin to practically restructure their spendings, their expenditures, the income, the inflow, and the operations to align with the incoming tax provisions. This is the time to consult tax practitioners. This is the time to consult seasoned practitioners in that area for proper guidance. This is the time to make sure that the books are well prepared. And this is the time to make sure that any outstanding tax liabilities are cleared. The reason being that uncleared tax liabilities may incur stiffer penalties under the new tax regime that is coming in. So businesses must make sure that they clear their board as of now from every tax liability that they are owing. Now, also businesses must now take a proactive step to restructure their internal workings. This is the best time to do it. Restructure their internal workings to align with the provisions of the tax, act. Businesses must also take to heart the importance of record keeping. In activities where they have not kept records, business must actively keep those records.
Right. All right.
So that once it is 1st of January, everything is good to go.
All right. So I guess the message is at this point, all ye businesses, put your house in order before the 1st of 2026. Thank you so much. It was great having this conversation with you. Marvis Uduogu is a team lead, taxation, immigration, labor and employment practice group at Stratton Bland Partners. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Suladi.